Hi.
Hi, Bernie.
And this is the first international episode of Marginally Qualified.
You know what's funny about the word international
Yeah.
is that you have to be in 2 different countries for it to apply.
Well, it's only a matter of time before California secedes from the Union.
That's a good point. We had a bunch of weird-ass protests here
Yeah.
this week. Some crazy stuff going on.
Berkeley
Crazy
is
stuff is going
quite
on.
the hot spot.
It is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of crazy stuff going on in the sports world as well.
Like the
That's what
Kyrie Irving
we're
deal.
here to talk about. This is Marginally Qualified. Today is Tuesday, August the 29th. I'm in California,
I'm in Syracuse,
which is
in New York.
a state called New York. So we have a few things to talk about this week. We'll talk about some NBA stuff,
Mm-hmm.
college football stuff,
Yes, sir.
some tennis stuff,
Indubitably.
lots of stuff in general. So why don't we hop right on into it without wasting any more time? Let's talk about Cavaliers and the Celtics. Kyrie Irving ends up on the other side of the flat east, maybe. We don't really know what's going on here, whether it's going to stay going through or how the trade's going to look at the end of it. So why don't we start our discussion by assuming the trade is going through as it stands.
Well, if that's true, initially I had conflicting feelings about this trade, but I really think that Cleveland came out on top of this deal.
Okay.
Danny Ainge really put a high price tag on Kyrie Irving, or maybe the Cavaliers did it, and Danny Ainge agreed.
No, it's not the Cavaliers. It's interesting to see how much value he put on Irving because we didn't see Ainge pull this kind of package for Paul George and Jimmy Butler.
Right.
They were on the table.
He clearly decided that he would rather have Kyrie than those people. I mean, obviously Kyrie was an option back then, so he couldn't decide that directly. But it's clear that he would rather have Kyrie than those pieces. And that's a really interesting thing to me because I think I would rather have Paul George or Jimmy Butler than Kyrie Irving. I feel like they both bring more to the table.
I guess we can start about talking basketball-wise. Perhaps they both bring more to the table. When Paul George and Jimmy Butler were being discussed, it's not as if they had Hayward, so it was a relative position of need.
Sure.
As opposed to trading your point guard for another point guard.
Right. And, when it comes to what the Celtics got as a positive here, Irving is marginally better at defense than Isaiah Thomas. He'll contribute more on that side of the floor, even though he's not a defensive superstar.
Yeah.
And I do think that Kyrie Irving is the second best one-on-one scorer in the league. The best being Kevin Durant, in my opinion. So what they get here is they get a straight-up killer, someone who can hit the crunch shot, someone who can, come off the ball, on the ball like no one's business.
It looked like it was something they sorely needed just watching the Eastern Conference Finals from last year. It's Ainge's job to put all the pieces together, and he has this hell of a coach to make them work together. So I'm not worried about that. The offense should be more smooth with Irving than with Thomas, because of the one thing that Irving has that Thomas doesn't is he can get by his guy every single time.
Right. I completely agree with that point. Also, something I saw that was really interesting that people were talking about is how differently the offenses function in each city and how the players are going to be able to adapt. And I think that Kyrie will be more easily adaptable to Boston's offense than Isaiah Thomas to Cleveland's offense.
You're absolutely right. Irving carries a lot of value in his versatility. Really, Boston's offense had to run through Isaiah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to say, I don't know how I want to word it, but Isaiah is not the isolation player that Irving is. We touched on that. He needed the pick and rolls to get going. And maybe it's because they didn't have the kind of high percentage shooters that they needed to in last year's conference finals. But when Thomas couldn't get it going, Boston's offense looked very sluggish and stuck in the mud. And you couldn't count on him to make something out of nothing.
Right. I completely agree with that. And another interesting thing we're going to see in Boston is that we're talking about Kyrie Irving kind of fitting into the offense there, and I, pointed that out too. But we have to consider that this isn't going to be the same Boston team at all.
No.
Out of the starting lineup, they've moved Avery Bradley, they've moved Jay Crowder, who sometimes started but mostly came off the bench, if my understanding is correct. I didn't watch the majority of their games. So they moved Jay Crowder, Avery Bradley, Isaiah Thomas now. This is not the same Boston team. Will it be a better Boston team? I think yes.
So you think it's a good deal for Boston?
I think it's a good deal for Boston. I think it's a better deal for the Cavs in the situation they're in. We can touch on that in 1 second. But I think it's a very good deal for Boston. This could make them contenders this year.
I think it might be a better deal for Boston than it is for the Cavaliers.
Interesting.
I'm looking at this not from a basketball perspective because I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I have a lot of faith in Stevens, but you don't know what's going to happen. One thing Danny Ainge does very well, and he struck again here, is he turns expiring assets into controllable ones. Thomas is on the end of his deal. He's going to be a free agent next summer. Kyrie Irving is still under contract for 3 years. He's younger. He's got more years in him. Avery Bradley, expiring contract, turns him into Marcus Morris with years on his deal. This is Danny Ainge knew exactly what he wanted here. He didn't care so much about how it's going to fit, how do I want to word this? He's not looking at it. He's not looking at guys as basketball players. He's looking at them as assets. And that's the way the league's GMs should be doing things.
That's interesting. It's a very interesting point. I didn't really think about any of that. The only player with a long-term contract that moved from Boston to another team this offseason was really Jay Crowder, who's on for 3 more years.
Yeah. And Jay Crowder's deal was a bargain, and that's the reason they hadn't traded him earlier was because of how much flexibility they gave him. Him. So to me, that explanation takes care of
Boston's side of the deal. Oh, right.
Takes care of them not going after Paul George. I don't think really there was any way that Ainge would have pulled that kind of stuff. Butler, maybe. I'm a little bit surprised still that they didn't make a move for Jimmy Butler. Let's think of it this way when we're thinking about assets. You're trading one all-star point guard for a younger, marginally better all-star point guard with more years. And you're also just trading away a few unproven long-term investments.
See, that's a good point, but when it says unproven long-term investments, the reason why I think the Cavs got the better part of this deal is because of how valuable I believe those unproven investments could prove to be. I guess I'm looking at this from an optimistic standpoint, but Jay Crowder is a solid player
Jay Crowder is very good, and we'll get into that in a sec.
Yeah, no, he's very good. It's a good 3% rate, and he's going to be good for Cleveland when LeBron inevitably leaves next year. Because they're not going to be competing for championships without Kyrie.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to make the finals, I think, possibly. But they're not going to, be competing for championships with Golden State. And what I'm really intrigued by in this whole move is the Nets' first-round pick. I think that's a lot of fun here because that could potentially turn into Marvin Bagley or Otto Porter Jr., who are...
Michael Porter.
I'm sorry. Otto Porter Jr. Listen to me. Michael Porter Jr., yes, who are huge names in the recruiting world right now and could prove to be, all-stars in their own right in the future.
Yeah, and touching on that point, talking about provenness and unprovenness, to play devil's advocate a little bit, we don't know if Kyrie Irving is proven as a leader of a top-tier team. In fact, we've seen evidence that would point the opposite direction. When LeBron doesn't play, the Cavs seriously struggle, and it shows in the record.
Yeah, that is very true. But I would also like to argue that, Kyrie doesn't even have to be the leader. This entire time,
No.
he said he wanted to be the leader. I don't think that's really what was happening. I think he didn't want to badmouth LeBron, yet he wanted to get out of a Cleveland situation that was entirely controlled by LeBron James.
And we talked about that.
We talked about that previously. Here, Gordon Hayward can come in and be the leader, who has been a leader on a team, who has been a leader on a Western Conference team that has performed quite well in the Western Conference.
And they might complement each other very well because if you can remember back last playoff season, it wasn't really Hayward that was taking the big shots in the fourth quarter. It was Joe Johnson. And
Right.
Kyrie Irving can be a pretty far upgrade from Joe Johnson in terms of offensive capabilities.
Yeah, we've seen Kyrie, put the dagger in other teams on several occasions, both during the regular season and in the playoffs, obviously, with his, ever-famous shot against Golden State, and then the regular season with his cooler shot against Golden State on Christmas Day. So, yeah.
No, we can talk about how the trade works for Cleveland. They certainly walk away with more overall pieces. That pick's going to be great for them to rebuild but probably when Thomas and James leave. Ante Zizic is 20-year-old 7-footer. Has not played a game in the NBA, but seems to be the kind of player that Cleveland's been looking for a while.
Yeah,
and Andrew Bogut.
Right, and whenever you get one of those young guys, hopefully Cleveland believes in their developmental team there and the developmental process, and they think they're going to be able to, string them along to be a contributor. Zizic doesn't have to be an all-star, He's not the all-star they're getting out of this deal for sure. They just think he's going to be a decent player, a rim protector, hopefully, with his size. And maybe he can... Yeah, I feel like Bogut was a good comparison that you made just now. It was, apt.
That's what they were going for. Jay Crowder can play both forward spots defensively, and that will be so invaluable to this team and to LeBron this season.
Might help them against Golden State a little, even, if they run into them in the finals. That'll be interesting to see.
Talk about for a second, going back to assets instead of players. What I think Cleveland should do, I think they should trade Thomas now.
I completely agree. You need to move as many people as you possibly can. If LeBron were to open himself up to be traded, that would be the necessity for them. I seriously doubt that's going to happen because LeBron is the GM right now. But you understand what I'm saying. I think they need to move people now. I'm talking everyone. I want a clean sweep in Cleveland. Get everyone out of there and reload.
So, from that perspective, you're getting young pieces, you're getting that pick, but you're also giving up 2 years of having a younger all-star point guard. So where does that balance come in? Right, I think Danny Ainge got the better of this deal in terms of assets. We'll see how basketball-wise it turns out. They both seem to get the kind of assets that they want in their current situations on both sides.
Right. It was a good deal for both teams. I didn't think it was going to happen, though, because, who trades to their biggest competition?
It's an interesting situation.
Yeah, but, it did, or it might, pending Isaiah Thomas's medical situation. I heard there was a rumor going around that the Cavs might have been asking for another sweetener, but I heard another report that said that they actually weren't even in trade talks since the decision to hold off on accepting the trade. So we just have no idea what's going on right now.
It's pointless to speculate about that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we can talk a bit about Isaiah right now. He's shown a lot of defensive issues, liabilities, if you want to say.
I would say liabilities.
Is he even going to be able to be on the court in that potential Warrior series?
The only way he could even be on the court is if a combination of Tristan Thompson, LeBron James, and Jay Crowder somehow manages to mask the defensive holes that would be, I don't even know, Isaiah Thomas and J.R. Smith, Isaiah Thomas and Iman Shumpert's a pretty good defender. Kevin Love, right. Kevin Love would be out there.
It's been Kevin Love and Kyrie were the problems in the past. Kyrie could turn it up a little bit in the playoffs. I don't think Thomas can. It's not an effort thing for him,
it's a physicality thing for him.
Thing for him, but unfortunately, he's not even 6 feet tall.
Right. When you're that short, and you're in the NBA,
Yeah.
obviously we've seen, he's an incredible athlete. He's an incredible offensive
Absolutely.
mastermind. To score 29 points at his height is absurd. It's possible though. If Kevin Durant switches onto Isaiah Thomas, it's not going to be pretty.
Well, to be fair, there may be a handful of dudes in the NBA that can switch onto Kevin Durant and hold
Right.
on.
But I feel like there are people who
Yeah.
could stop Kevin Durant 30% of the time, and there are people who could stop Kevin Durant 0% of the time. And that's the difference we're seeing here. And that is an important number when you're playing an entire playoff series.
So, not to say that Derrick Rose is a positive defender, but he is in Cleveland now.
I keep forgetting about that.
Do you consider making Rose the starter and you let Thomas lead that second unit?
I had not even considered that as an option. I don't know. Rose put up good numbers last year on a pretty bad team. He looked okay when he was playing. He looked very okay. He didn't look like a starting point guard on a championship team, in my opinion. But the Thomas situation poses an interesting matchup when you roll into second units, where Sean Livingston would be guarding Isaiah Thomas, correct? If you went point guard.
Yeah.
And,
I wouldn't be so worried about matchups in the second unit. I'm more worried about
matchups in the first unit. Oh, production. All right, well, in that case, yeah, that might be a very good idea. Are they going to do it? No, I don't think so.
They probably won't.
I don't think
Again,
they...
what they should do is take Thomas now and trade him for more pieces.
Yeah, it's probably the best idea. Picks. I like picks.
Picks are good. In terms of how this all works out basketball-wise, I hope that we don't judge the success of this trade on opening night when these two teams are going to meet.
Right, the success of this trade is going to be judged after the playoffs and after the draft, in my opinion.
Because there is a very good chance that a fresh LeBron opens up a can of his best stuff and runs rampant. Because this is a really good trade for Boston, in my opinion, for now and especially for the future, with the way Danny Ainge has reconfigured a lot of his assets and contract situations.
Build through the draft.
Go through the draft.
That's the way to do it.
That's how you do it. Or you can just be Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge and Jerry West may be the two biggest weapons in basketball right now.
Really? It's a bold claim.
To take it away from players, but it's...
Right.
If you're looking at what each of them have done for their franchises, it's an arguable case. It's not clear cut, obviously.
Very much so.
Yeah. Why don't we take a break, and we'll be right back.
Alrighty.
All right. Hey, Bernie.
Yeah.
That's a really cool brick wall.
Yeah, it is. It's white.
I'm glad.
I'm not sure if it's...
That's your backdrop today.
Yeah, I'm in the basement of a building. I got out of class around 6:30 and didn't want to take the bus home because I hate public transportation.
Why do you hate public transportation?
Too many people. I prefer to be private in my car so I can do things privately.
Sure. Speaking of too many people, there are a lot of teams vying for playoff spots this year. College football playoff, the fourth year is upon us. Seems to be going okay so far, but that's besides the point. Who's going to make the playoff?
I've enjoyed it so far. Who's going to make the
playoff
playoff?
So far?
Well,
this year.
This year, I have a list here on my cellular device.
Oh.
Yes. My playoff teams this year are Alabama. Gonna walk in with 12 wins, easy pick. Perennial super team.
Sure.
Gotta love them. Even with the unfortunate loss of their starting defensive end, can't remember his name. The rest of their team is so good. I think you're going to see improvement from their QB, Hurts, right? I'm blanking on the name. Yeah. And, hopefully they taught him how to pass and such.
Yeah. Obviously, we have to say Alabama. It's too hard to bet against them making the playoff at this time, especially considering the, I'm not sure I want to say weakness of the SEC, but
the relative weakness to recent years. Yeah.
Yeah. If you really think about it, the conference is not going to be that impressive without Alabama this year. That being said, they should make it.
Right.
And just to preface all this stuff, preseason predictions are hard to do because of how much turnover there are in college sports.
And you never
unknowns with the various teams.
Exactly.
We haven't watched any of these teams play in their current states yet, so it'll be hard to say. But Alabama is
Alabama.
one.
Also have OSU in there, as much as
The other obligatory pick is Ohio State.
I say that through my teeth. I hate Ohio State with all my passion.
No, you
don't. I do. I hate Ohio State so much.
I don't hate Ohio State.
It's just the fans are the worst. I hate them.
Why are their fans the worst?
Because they're just mean. They're just mean.
Okay.
You know, there's nothing.
Sure.
There's nothing happy about Ohio State fans. I think they enjoy seeing other teams lose more than they enjoy seeing their team win.
Well, they win a lot, and they're going to win a lot this season.
They are going to win a lot this season. They've got.
They do have a tough schedule, but
they've got a deadly offense, and their defense is just.
They have the talent to load it. Sometimes when you look at a team's schedule, and you look at the hard games, you think, I don't know if I trust this team to make it through that. This seems to be an exception.
Right.
These guys are loaded.
I mean, they're playing in a very strong Big Ten conference, but I really think that they're just gonna. I really think they're gonna run the table. I have them going in at 12 wins.
12 wins. They play in a pretty strong Big Ten conference. A couple road games that are gonna be important.
Right.
They're playing in the Big House. They also play Oklahoma in the Horseshoe that second week,
which is another interesting game to watch. But I don't think there's gonna be any. I'm blanking on the name of the conference. Big 12 representatives in the playoff this year.
Sure, let's talk about Ohio State a little more before we get there.
Pardon me.
I don't really care all that much who's on the schedule. I'm gonna take a leap of faith and saying we'll see JT Barrett version 1 again.
Yes.
We could see him in the Heisman race.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah. The JT Barrett that took over for an injured Braxton Miller and almost won the Heisman in 9 games. I know we talk about all the time like the turnover that they have on defense, but we talked about the secondary turnover they had last season, and they had 3 guys in the secondary getting drafted. Yeah,
so Ohio State definitely is, one of the premier programs when it comes to developing young players. And, they have a lot of returning players comparatively to their year last year. And we all know how well they did last year.
Yeah.
So, easy pick for the playoff spot.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that last year's team was a pretty young team.
Yeah, it was. Last year at the beginning of the year, a lot of people were saying, can Ohio State make the playoffs? They're so young this year. It was very, very interesting to see how well they did despite their youth and inexperience on the field. That's all I can really say. I just, I trust them. I trust them to make the playoff again.
Yeah, and from there, that's where things get a little more cloudy.
Right. I have them in here as my 2 seed, so obviously they'll be matching up against my 3 seed. I think they'll beat because I ranked one of them as the 2 seed and one of them as the 3 seed.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. My 3 seed in here is USC.
USC.
Their QB, Sam Darnold, is one of the premier NFL prospects this year. They've been steadily improving over the past, 10 years since they were railed by those sanctions, And I really think this is their year to come out on top of their conference, to succeed in a relatively weak conference, but with some good competition at the same time. Washington, Stanford, both respectable teams. I really think they're going to kind of waltz into the playoff, though, without much competition or resistance.
Yeah, there is definitely a scenario in which they do that, but the Pac-12 strength worries me in a way it's not really worrying you as much. You're seeing it more as...
I don't trust the Pac-12.
An advantage for them?
Yes.
I don't trust the Pac-12, and that's what worries me. There is a scenario where if USC happens to drop 1 game, they are out because of their schedule.
I see that, but we thought that last year, and Washington made it in with 11 wins.
Who did Washington lost to USC, right?
Yeah. Who was a good team.
The Big 12 was just garbage.
Okay.
Yeah, so probably an ACC team's going to make it. We'll talk about that in a sec. We're picking Alabama and Ohio State. Then it comes down to Pac-12 and Big 12, whoever can run the table better. And USC certainly seems positioned to run the table better. Just looking at their schedule, I don't see that many games they shouldn't be big favorites in.
Sure.
But I don't think I'm going to pick them just because if they lose that one game, I think they're out.
Who would you put in there at your number 3 spot then?
My number
As the
3
three
spot,
seed.
I'd put Florida State.
Florida State.
I think Florida State's ready to take back control of the ACC from Clemson. And Florida State, being in the ACC, doesn't have the problem where they lose one game and they're out. Right? If they lose against Alabama that first week, I think they're in the same spot.
I don't think so, because
maybe not in the same spot, but it doesn't hurt
they're walking
them
on,
as much.
I think they're walking on. I can't believe I'm blanking on this. I think they're in a pretty precarious spot if they lose week 1. When
Really?
they lose week 1. Yeah, because I don't think they're going to let a 2-loss team into the playoffs, and they still have to make it through the entire ACC. And you see some high-powered
Sure.
offenses in the ACC that they're going to run into, and
Sure.
you see some teams that are not pushovers in the ACC. Also, you see Syracuse, a great football team with a
Shut up.
fantastic upwards trend in their
No.
wins, who
Florida
could make an
State's-
impact this year.
Florida State's defense is loaded the
That is
way
true.
previous playoff teams' defenses were loaded.
They have some
You got
dudes.
Derwin James, Josh Sweat, Derek Notty's there, Tavares McFadden, Matthew Thomas, all guys that are supposed to go within the first 2 rounds. I could keep going on. This defense is very reminiscent of the kind of defense they had when they just blew everyone out by 40 points on their way to that national title a few years ago. If DeAndre Francois can play with the toughness he did last year, I'm expecting big things from this team. Their biggest problem was the offensive line. So if they can shore that up and Francois can hang in there the way he did, I trust them to go pretty far. That Clemson game will probably decide the ACC once again. It always seems to. So that's the one we'll be looking at.
Right. And I had FSU in as my 4 seed. So
Okay.
I completely agree. They have some guys on their defense that make you say, like, I don't even, like, ooh, oh, god damn. Like, oh, like, damn. Like, when they tackle someone, you're like, oh, god damn it, that must have hurt.
Yeah, I was
Oh,
watching just.
scary guys on that
I know
team.
we've talked about Derwin James before, but I was
It's
watching.
not just Derwin James, though. They've got
It's not.
several guys
It's
who
not.
are top defensive players.
I was watching one of his highlights the other day, and that clip against Florida came up where he was positioned basically as a defensive end, 2-stance defensive end. He comes up the line, and he literally throws an offensive lineman. I'm not right.
An offensive lineman.
Normally, when you say like that dude got thrown, it's like an exaggeration. He lifted him off of his feet and sent him backwards. Safeties aren't supposed to do that. This team is crazy. That guy's crazy.
Anyway,
They're going to be good even if they win.
they're going to be good. Also,
Or
I
even
want
if
to
they
say
lose
one
that
more
first
thing.
week.
I want to say
Go.
one more thing. Even though those are my 4 teams, I want to say watch out for Penn State to make it if one of those 1-loss teams from a weaker conference doesn't. I feel like
very, very good.
I feel like a 1-loss Penn State team could sneak in there over a 1-loss USC or a 1-loss Washington or a 1-loss Oklahoma even. I really feel like people respect the Big Ten right now. People are high on the Big Ten even after the disappointing bowl season last year. And I really think
they're very, very good.
I really think that you could get that representation from a team that has one of the premier defenses in the league and a really nice 1-2 punch in their QB and running back. I cannot say his first name ever, but Barkley. Great.
Saquon Barkley.
Saquon
Barkley.
I cannot say his name.
Trace McSorley, my dude.
Right. But great team. I would love to see them in the playoff where they would probably lose to Alabama in the first round. But,
So if USC is going to be the pick to come out of the Pac-12, for the sake of argument, let's just talk about the Big 12 for a second. This is Lincoln Riley's first year in Norman. I don't think Oklahoma has the schedule to make it to the playoff this year.
Right, they run into a couple. Yeah, they run into a couple tough games. Yeah.
Not going to bet on them in that game. And then Bedlam is in Stillwater this year. And
which is risky.
And from what we're hearing, Gundy's Cowboys have the firepower to be a contender.
Some people are even picking them as a dark horse team to make the playoff.
Yeah, and they are absolutely a dark horse team to make the playoff. Their defense has been, a good word, has been opportunistic. Very recently, they create a lot of turnovers, but they're not very good. Can bad defensive teams make the playoff?
I think bad defensive teams can make the playoff if your offense is good enough, and I think that's certainly the case that we're seeing in Oklahoma State right now. A lot of people are picking them because of their offensive firepower and ignoring the defensive side of the ball. Can they make the playoffs with offense? Yes. Can they win the playoffs without defense? No. I very much think they cannot win the playoff.
Though, and especially in the Big 12, I think they'll walk away from the Big 12 with the top spot in the conference. Now, whether or not...
Interesting. Not Oklahoma.
If they run... No, not Oklahoma. Oklahoma has to go play in their stadium in Lincoln Riley's first year. This is the year to do it for Oklahoma State. They have probably, inarguably, the best quarterback wideout combo in the country right now. The offense is going to be very, very good, I think. They do have a very home-heavy schedule and if they get through that with no losses, especially against that Oklahoma game, their toughest road game is going to be, I'm looking at it right now, Texas, West Virginia. They have, the schedule is impressive enough for them that if they run the table, they're definitely in. If they drop one game and USC drops one game, there's an argument to be made there because of scheduling.
Sure.
They left a pretty lasting impression, I think, in that shellacking of Colorado in the Alamo Bowl last season.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, don't count this team out. They're better than they're getting credit for right now.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Something dropped and I was putting it back. So why don't we talk about some of these Week 1 games? There are some big-time tilts for a kickoff weekend. People are talking about this being the biggest kickoff weekend in recent history, maybe all history.
I mean,
why don't we start with Florida State and Alabama, because that's the one with the biggest playoff implications.
It's a killer opening game. And we talked about it very briefly a second ago when we were discussing the teams in the playoff. I think both of these teams are going to make the playoff. I think this is a preview of the first round of the playoff. I think Alabama walks into the playoff unscathed. I think a one-loss Florida State team seeks revenge as a 4 seed, and that possibility excites me so very much. I feel like it'll be a great entertainment event, not only a football game, because the storyline will be so awesome. And I'm confident that Alabama is going to win this game for the sheer reason that they're Alabama. They exert their dominance every year. I think it'd be hilarious to see Saban come out and lose the first game of the year. That'd be really funny, but I don't think it's going to happen. They're a juggernaut.
You know that I'm a bit of a Florida State fan.
I am aware.
So I'm going to be rooting for them. But gotta unbiasedly say that I'm going to pick Alabama for this one.
Right.
Just because looking at strengths and weaknesses, Alabama's strength is probably going to be their passing game. So maybe a low-scoring game, but Florida State's biggest strength is their pass protection. And if you can't get that done against Alabama, you're going to have issues.
Right.
Alabama's defense and secondary are going to be loaded again, and you can't just be
That's inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully DeAndre Francois doesn't get hurt in this game, because if the floodgates open, those boys are going to be coming through pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about the other big game this weekend for a bit, since we're biased. What about Michigan and Florida in the battle of the crazy gyms?
I think there's a lot of drama leading up to this one. Michigan's shellacking of Florida a couple of years ago in their bowl game.
That was not a shellacking.
It was a shellacking.
That was in 2008. That's not a couple of years ago.
No, we played
Oh,
them,
the other one.
We played
the other
them,
one, right.
Yeah,
You're right.
Them like
I forgot
2 years
about
ago.
that one.
Yeah, and we beat
Right.
them good. We really
We
did.
did.
And but completely different team. It's not applicable at all.
Yeah.
We had the God at QB back then.
I'm sorry, what?
The God. You know who
God.
I'm talking about. Yes. The man leading our offense to victory. I'm sorry. I'm making too big of a joke out of this. Point is, now we have Wilton Spate, who I don't really trust to throw the long ball against a very good Florida defense and a Florida team that has some of their best offensive talent in a couple of years, is what I've been hearing from articles and SportsCenter at least. But
Yeah, right.
Yeah, people are really hyping up this Florida offense, saying it's better than it has been in recent years, where Florida has kind of been like a one-way team, primarily defensively. If I'm not mistaken.
They have been, and I could see this game being a very defensive battle. Both sides are replacing lots of defensive talent, but they seem to have the replacements from what we're hearing.
Yeah.
Florida State has to replace a lot of those big names in the secondary. Tease Tabor is gone. Quincy Wilson is gone. Florida.
Right.
But they have the athletes to step into those roles, though. Michigan's returning only one starter on defense, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is shaky. But that one starter...
So both of these defenses are supposed to be very good, but we don't really know.
We don't know yet, exactly. But I'm going to give both teams the benefit of the doubt and say they're going to field very good defenses.
Yeah.
Just because of the track record we've seen with both teams over the past couple of years and their various recruiting successes.
Yeah, so if the defenses we're going to assume to be fine, we can talk about both teams' offenses. And I guess the first thing I'd like to say is Jim McElwain plans on playing 3 different quarterbacks, right? And
Did he actually say that?
Yeah, he's been talking about playing 3 quarterbacks.
In the one game?
Yeah, I think.
Does he realize this isn't a preseason game?
Well, it is for the SEC. He has almost 10 players suspended. So
including one of their better wide receivers, if I'm not mistaken.
Their biggest playmaker, Antonio Callaway, is not going to be in the game.
Right.
He was the guy that caught that 4th down pass and ran 50 yards in to beat Tennessee a couple of years ago. But just based on that, who seems like they're in better shape on the surface?
Well, I would say Michigan seems like they're much better
shape. Michigan seems to have the advantage.
Yeah, while Jim Harbaugh hasn't named a starting QB yet, everyone's pretty confident it's going to be Wilton Spate, as he did perform okay last year. I really hope he has improved his deep ball, because if he could throw the deep ball, we would have beaten Iowa, and that would have changed our season. If he could have thrown the deep ball, which he just could not, but I'm sorry, I digress. Back to this. I expect to see some improvement from Spate. I also expect to see a big feature role back in Chris Evans, who showed a lot of promise last year and really had a great game against Florida State. Primarily that one run at the end.
The lead hammer guy?
I wouldn't call him a hammer guy. He's but I understand what you're trying to say. Yeah, I think he can really carry the offense. I think he can be our workhorse this year.
Okay.
And I think our offensive line is going to show some improvement too.
Because there is something to be said about a running back that on first down, he gets 3 yards every time, falls forward, and gets 4 instead of 3 yards and gets pushed backward.
Right, I completely agree with that. But in the offseason, I think he picked up 20 pounds. And people are saying, and people are saying he's retained a lot of his speed, which is something that you never want to lose. Mm-hmm. So and Jim Harbaugh keeps saying this. He said this in several press conferences now. He believes that the most improvement a football player can ever have is from their freshman year of college to their sophomore year of college, as a dramatic increase. Which I kind of see logically.
I guess so. That makes sense.
I see that logically. You're practicing at a different level. You're training at a different level. You're optimizing your body to a different level. So I really think you could see huge improvement from this young Michigan team, this young Michigan offense. And another fun player to watch is going to be oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. I prepped his name. Peoples-Jones. Big name, wide receiver recruit. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to have a lot of fun running all over this Florida team. I'm picking Michigan to win the game.
You're going to pick Michigan. Well, we're talking about speed. I know it's an age-old argument about...
Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. I'm sorry, one thing. Chris Evans isn't the only running back in Michigan, too, which is nice. You know, we've still got Karan Hingden and Ty Isaac and some great players who are actually pushing him for the starting job, according to Harbaugh. But I think Evans is going to be the feature back. I'm sorry, please continue.
Yeah, speaking of Evans' speed, speed of Florida's playmakers, I think, is something to be scared of against a young, inexperienced defense. If you get one step behind some of these guys, speed kills.
Yeah.
And that's where Antonio Callaway's suspension is huge from this perspective.
Absolutely.
Especially considering how fairly bad the offense would have been without him. They just could not score points. I think Michigan wins this one. Florida, I don't know if they're really all that good.
Right.
The offense really held this team back in the past, and I'm not ready to say that they can catch up now. Suspensions and turmoil kind of kill them, in my eyes. Michigan's offense isn't good, but they'll be good enough to put 10, 14, 17 points up there.
I completely agree.
Yeah. So we're picking Michigan. I read an article this week, by the way.
What did it say?
That ranked Michigan as the #1 party school in the U.S.
Interesting.
Because Michigan has to be the best at everything.
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily true. I mean, did Michigan write the article?
I don't know. Probably not.
Probably not, right.
Probably not. Why don't we take a quick break, and we'll come back with some tennis stuff.
Alrighty.
And we're back.
Yep.
And we're back. So, U.S. Open has started.
Yes.
Round 1 was...
Still finishing, I think, right? Or, yes.
I don't know.
I'm not sure. Point is, U.S. Open is underway. We've already seen a lot of fun stuff happen in the U.S. Open and some kind of disappointing things, primarily the disappointments on the men's side. We'll get into that in 1 second. First, I just want to talk about the crazy upsets. Naomi Osaka is the name of the 19-year-old Japanese player that upset Kerber, who was the defending...
This morning.
Yeah,
right?
This morning. Yep. The defending champion, 6-3, 6-1. It was a rout. And it marks a really interesting decline in Kerber's career over the past year. She was kind of on top of the world last year. She took home the Australian Open and the U.S. Open. But since then, she's failed to defend both of those titles and even failed to advance past the fourth round of any of the majors since then.
Yeah, and I haven't really been following the women's side of this too much, but I was watching that match a bit this morning, and the broadcasters are talking about how she seems to not be playing with the same aggressiveness, and there needs to be a balance there between her defensive game and how far you can push.
That's exactly right. That's a perfect point. Another thing that was really interesting about this specific matchup today is Osaka plays a much more aggressive game than Kerber. Kerber's more of a defensive player.
Very powerful little girl.
Yeah, you saw it on the court. You know, Osaka,
I don't want to say like girl in a demeaning manner, but she's only 19.
Right. She's still so young. And it was just, the matchup, I feel like I prefer the aggressive brand of tennis. I feel like you need to either strike a good balance or play more on the aggressive side rather than play to the defensive side. I know a lot of people disagree with that. Obviously, some people agree too, because Osaka agreed with me, I guess, and routed Kerber, who is going to fall out of the top 10 after this tournament now.
How about Maria Sharapova?
Sharapova was amazing in her comeback match after facing some time off because of suspicion of drug use, I believe was why she hasn't played recently.
Sweet.
But it was fun to watch her come back and win that match. She was elated. I would love to see a kind of unseeded player. Technically, I think she got one of those at-large bids, not one of the, high. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure.
I would love to see her make a deep run into this tournament. But besides that, I really wanted to talk about the disappointing men's bracket in this tournament.
Novak's out.
At the Grand Slam, you expect to see the best players in the world. At the Grand Slams, plural. U.S. Open included. But 5 of the top 11 players aren't there. Number 2, Andy Murray. Number 5, Djokovic. You have Raonic, Nishikori, and Wawrinka all also missing the tournament. And these are big names.
Federer is dealing with a back problem, and he's 36.
But he's still playing.
He's still playing. Nadal's playing, but he hasn't looked that convincing with all these guys out and not a lot of trust at the top of the table. This may be the best chance for someone outside the Big Four to win a major this year.
I agree. But at the same time, despite the back injury, I think this is an ideal time for Federer to extend his legacy, and I'm not even joking. I completely think this is a viable thing that can happen. You know, I wasn't really trusting him in Wimbledon. I kind of was leaning towards Murray, but with Murray out of the picture, and not just Murray, but so many big names not there, this is an ideal time for someone like Federer or Nadal to, strike and just extend to their already illustrious, career. And I really think Federer is going to be able to do it in this tournament.
You think Federer is going to win?
Yeah.
How about how are we thinking on Alexander Zverev?
He's good. He's young, if my memory serves. I think he's still sub 27, right? I think he's 27, 26 years old.
He's been looking pretty impressive.
He's not. I think he's even younger. Actually, I don't know. I cannot remember this guy's name, but I have been watching, and he has been looking really good.
He's been looking pretty good. He just beat Federer in some sort of final, didn't he?
Right, in some tournament recently. I think it was Federer. I can't quite remember. But
what about my boy Nick Kyrgios?
Yeah, Nick Kyrgios.
Any
should
chance
not
for
be
Nick
allowed
Kyrgios
on a tennis court ever again?
Why?
Should ban him from the sport.
No.
Nick Kyrgios is a disgrace.
No. Who's the biggest dark horse here?
I really don't know. It's completely up in the air. Zverev is a completely viable person to win the tournament here. But when it comes to tennis, the best players win. I feel like there's not a lot of variability.
Sure.
Every once in a while you see, lightning strike, but there isn't a lot of variability. I think I'd be very hard pressed to not pick Federer or
Nadal.
Stuttering. Yeah, Nadal to walk away with this championship.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. They say lightning never strikes twice.
But it very well could. And it has happened to people. Okay. Yeah, we're back. Yeah.
We're back.
To talk about
back.
What happens when a team gets 12 fouls, 10 fouls. It's a double bonus.
It's the double bonus.
So, Grant, the UCL groups draw, which I totally know what that is,
Did you really have to do that?
just came out.
Couldn't you have just opened with something else and let me transition into it? No, you had to blow it like that. So the Champions League groups came out. Some interesting things going on. We do have a group of death going, and hopefully we will see some fun matchups. Moving on, some more soccer stuff. Transfer window's closing this Thursday, so teams are going to lock in their rosters. Same goes for baseball. The waiver window is closing this Thursday, so maybe we'll see some fun deadline day stuff going on. Maybe Justin Verlander gets moved.
That'd be fun.
Maybe Sanchez gets moved.
Who knows?
Who knows? Other people getting moved. The voices of college football for the past decade or so, Brent Musburger and Vern Lundquist, are not going to be on the air this season.
At all? I must have missed this. I don't know what's going on. What's happening?
They're both completely retired.
Interesting.
It's over.
That's sad.
Brad Nessler takes over for CBS. Chris Fowler will continue to be the big-time ABC games, which is too bad that both of those guys are gone.
I really like Brent Musburger.
Brent was my favorite.
Yeah, he was a good color commentator type of guy. Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah, his voice was pretty sweet. What else happened this week?
Jersey burning. A lot of it.
Jersey burning happened.
A lot of toxic fumes from
just
jerseys.
So stupid.
Listen, if you're burning...
Especially in a trade?
Yeah, in a trade.
Come on, man.
Also, people have been making really good points. I don't really want to harp on it too much. But the dude, played after his sister died. The day after, for your city.
Right, a lot of players... Sorry, continue.
If you're burning his jersey, fuck you. If you're burning his jersey, I want you to, put your head right over the flames and inhale the fumes.
Oh God.
Like that's yeah.
Oh God.
You should be done. Don't burn jerseys.
You know,
Also, he might still be on your team now.
He might be, which would be funny. Players have been making good points about this kind of stuff where, the fans demand loyalty from them.
Yeah, but then shout to trade them at the quickest,
When they get traded, it's just business for the owners, and how there's a real big double standard there.
Right. It should be just business. I think it should be just business all the time.
Yeah.
Granted,
you can't.
KD is still a snake. Did you see the shoes he just released?
No.
He released these. Honestly, they're kind of sick. I love them. They're these red shoes, and they're like this rich red color, and they're called red velvet, like the cake flavor. And the ad he released them with has like cupcakes surrounding them, which I think is just awesome. I listen. I don't actually hate KD. I think that's friggin' hilarious that he did that.
Funny.
Yeah, I think that's great.
He just has to add to his image, though.
Yeah.
So if the hate comes, then it's on him, and he understands that.
Right.
Yeah, let's move into best and worst performances of the week. Best performance, we have a few options. Huddersfield Town, they're new in the Premier League this season. They haven't lost yet, though. That's pretty awesome.
Number one.
Newly promoted team. I believe they're number two.
Number two.
Pretty
close to number one.
Second option, the Yankees-Tigers fight. That was pretty fun.
Which the Tigers won.
Which the Tigers won.
Tigers won that fight.
Maybe it is distasteful for us to put that in best performance.
Miggy was throwing punches.
Dude. He got in that stance pretty quick. That's all I'm saying.
Miggy's been in a fight before. You can tell.
He did. Speaking of fighting, the third option is going to go to boxing. Boxing gets one of our week's best performances for making people pay extra money to see two dudes walk around a rink and stare at each other. Go boxing. You figured out a great business strategy. And finally, Albert Pujols becomes the highest. He is the foreign-born player with the most home runs now.
That's the right phraseology.
Yes.
I'm going to pick Miggy because he was throwing punches like a dude.
He got real in there.
He like roundhouse punched I'm sorry, not roundhouse. He was throwing hooks. He was oh my God, that was the fight.
He threw more punches than Mayweather did. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, Mayweather finished McGregor off pretty easily, in my opinion.
Hey, Cabrera would have finished him too.
I agree. Yeah.
Would have decked that guy. I'm gonna go with Albert Pujols. That's pretty cool for him. Glad he's moving on up there. He passed Jim Thome. I think he's 6th on the all-time list now. If I'm not mistaken. Could be totally wrong about that. Let's move on to the worst performance, and we have a few pretty funny ones going on. The Royals
about to make history.
Haven't scored a run in 43 innings. Yikes! That's a lot of innings to not score a run in. Michigan gets.
That's like 5 games, right? That's 5 games. Almost 5 games.
Since like last Thursday.
Yeah, that's.
University of Michigan gets 2 choices up here. One for those just terrible uniforms.
Color rush.
And John Beilein was voted the cleanest coach in NCAA basketball.
See, I don't understand. I don't understand why that's a negative thing.
If you ain't cheating, then you ain't trying. That's what I always hear. And the Mariners apparently weren't trying either because they committed 5 errors in 1 inning.
Wow.
Gene Segura, shortstop, had 3 of those.
All right. Why don't you go first? Pick your worst performance of the week.
I'm gonna go with the Royals.
Fair, more than fair. That is pathetic as a baseball team.
Right.
At some point, I bet it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like they're trying so hard to score that they just can't do it. It's like a mental block.
It's not like soccer or even hockey in a way where goals are harder to come by, and it's not uncommon in those sports to go a couple games at a time without scoring if you're bad.
Sure.
But you have to be terrible
To go 43 innings without scoring a single run.
A single run. You have to be in some kind of slump.
It's hard to go 43 innings without scoring a home run. Like after like 5 games without a home run.
What do you think is harder going? Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to ask that question.
Okay. I'll move on to
your choice?
my worst performance, which is the Mariners committing 5 errors in 1 inning. That is pathetic. That is more. You are a professional athlete, Mariners. You are a organization. You're supposed to be the cream of the crop of like baseball players.
You know what the funniest part of that inning was the first inning against the Yankees. I think the Yankees only scored 2 runs.
Yeah, that is. No, I think they scored 3. I think they scored 3.
They scored 3. Okay.
I think they got 3. I don't quite remember. Point is, come on.
Come on, guys.
Come on.
You blew it.
You blew it.
You blew it. This has been Marginally Qualified.
Thanks
Hopefully we didn't blow it.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Yeah.
Sweet. Nicely done.